Hey everyone, this is Edwin Olvera from Edwin Olvera Dance and Creative Services, and I have a special guest for today's interview for Saturday's session. It's Daniel Burkholder. Daniel is currently a assistant professor of dance at the University of Milwaukee, Peck School of the Arts. It's my old, what they call alma mater. And the interesting thing is, Daniel, you received your M.F.A. from UWM in what, 2010, 2011, somewhere around there?
Yeah, it was in 2011 when I finished my degree.
Oh wow! So this is kind of your home as well. Daniel's originally from the Washington D.C. area, and is here with his lovely wife, and she's also a teacher here doing aerial arts, Andrea. So Daniel, let's talk about what is the early signs that you can recall, or maybe your parents noticed of you being a natural mover.
Yeah. Well, I actually grew up in Michigan, just outside Detroit, and we had just moved back to the area from living outside Philadelphia for a couple years, and my parents wanted to get me involved with something physical, and they thought of signing me up for like Little League Baseball or Pee Wee football or something like that. But where we had moved at the time, there were not enough teams for all the kids who wanted to participate. And since we had just moved there, we kind of were at the bottom of the list. But my parents were actually dancers. They were ballroom dancers. They had done some like amateur competing in ballroom, and they taught ballroom and stuff like that. So they thought there's a little a little dance studio in a strip mall close to us, and they had a jazz class for boys taught by a male instructor. And they thought that might be a way to work on my coordination and just, kind of get me physical in a different way until sports teams opened up or I had other opportunities. But the first year I took jazz, the second year I added tap, the third year I added ballet, and I just kind of kept going from there.
Oh my God, that's amazing! And to have parents that are dancers, so they can understand so many things that a young dancer is going through, whether it's, adjustment to the body or utilizing different muscle groups, especially with ballroom because of the clean lines and the presentation.
Yeah.
I was going to make a quick reference to your video Dwell when you were, that I watched, and it's you talking about your time living in the dorms and at UWM.
Oh, yeah.
Your masters. And you have such clean lines. You're fast, you have clean lines, and there's a heck of an attack there.
Yeah, well, thank you. What's interesting is that not only did my parents dance, but my dad's parents also danced. They were square dancers, and when they retired, they would go for a while. They were going to 5, 6 square dances a week. So not only, being a male dancer is kind of rare, but having a father and a grandfather who both love to dance, then, neither of them were ever professionals or aspired to that in any way, but it's kind of a logical outcome for having a family that dances.
And accepting as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah, very much so.
Amongst the styles that you were studying, was there one that really influenced you the most?
Growing up when I was, from the time I was 9 through high school, I was very much a competition dancer. The studio I went to did the competition, so obviously jazz was a big factor in my training. We also did a lot of tap dancing. I love tap dancing. My first, as you probably know, a lot of what I do now is improvisational performance. And my first improv performances were tap dancing. So that was a big influence. But also in high school, I was a breaker. And the first dance company I ever started was in high school, was a break dance company. And I think that while I did it for a couple years, But I think the physicality, the athleticism of breaking, the sequentialness of when you're like popping and stuff like that, all of that feeds into kind of the vocabulary that I do now. I think when you know that that's in my background, you can see that physicality present, but it's not so obvious. If you don't know that, I don't think it's so obvious. It's not like, oh, he's breaking now, but that is part of the kind of ground that I work from.
That's wonderful. And then, Daniel, how did you get into contact improv? Where was that point where you were exposed to it?
Yeah, I ended up going to my undergraduate studies was at Sarah Lawrence College, which is just outside New York City, and the program was definitely a postmodern program. When I was there, Viola Farber took over the dance department. She was a former Cunningham dancer, one of the original Cunningham dancers, and had her own company for many years in New York City, taught in Paris and stuff like that. But so it was very much a postmodern study. And after college, I stayed in that world. I never ventured kind of into, more commercial dance or things like that. I very much stayed in the postmodern world. And it just, I was working after college with a colleague, Sharon Manser, who I still, perform with and collaborate with. And we did a lot of duet work, and that led us to looking at different kind of ways of being in a duet that were equal, that we weren't interested in, say, going back to like, say, a more ballroom where there's a leader and follower, but how can we both be equal? And contact improv contains all of that. I mean, it contains the physicality that I so like and drawn to, but also the kind of equal roles between the two partners.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, I've had a couple of moments in my in career where I was exposed to contact improv, and I love the simple fact of just like letting go. There wasn't a worry of like, for example, as we both know, I've done a lot of stuff with Pilabolus and with their workshops,
right,
teaching and all this stuff, and sometimes people get so caught up in the partnering, as in like physically lifting people, versus just enjoying the free flow experience of two bodies sharing space,
Yeah.
And that's so gratifying that you can just keep going and it's endless and there's never like a dull moment, Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it is a study of the body and two bodies in motion and in relationship to one another, and it's complex. And there's a freedom to it, but there's also a rigor to it when you're really studying it. So it has this balance between kind of exploration and clarity. That's not always, I think, obvious from the outside, because it looks like two people just kind of rolling around on each other, or it can look like that. But there's a lot of layers to it.
That's for sure. And then how did you get involved with the
the Feldenkrais work?
Where you kind of sit on top, you sit in these boards or like these conventions that have to do with contact improv, the one in the West Coast and the rest of them.
Yeah, so it's both of those are really just. So I was on the steering committee for the West Coast Contact Improv Festival for a couple of years. For a couple of years before that, I was part of the teaching pool. That festival, which it no longer is in existence, but it was a collaborative festival. There wasn't a single person that ran that festival. It was a group, a pool of teachers that organized it every year. And after being part of the pool of teachers for 2 years, I joined the steering committee to help be more active in organizing it. And it's just about being part of a community and showing up and be willing to to offer your time to help the community move forward. And that's very much also in the DC area when I helped as a curator for the DC International Improv Festival. I had been part of the DC dance community as a whole for a number of years, many years at that point. I was known in the community as one of the improvisers, someone who explores improvisational performance. And when Maida Withers, who's really the person who started that festival, was looking to expand it and find, people to help her broaden the mission of the festival, because of the commitment of being in that community and stuff like that, I was one of the people that was, offered an opportunity to help with that and to assist in expanding that festival. And both experiences were very different, and but both were really satisfying in terms of being able to make a contribution to something that matters, or something that supports both audiences and artists in ways that maybe they don't always get supported.
Yeah, and especially when there is that team collaboration. It's like, I'm not doing this by myself. I have to put on this massive production or this event or this gathering, and then everyone kind of chips away with the stress of that event. And the beautiful thing about collaborating with people, not just also in a team setting, but when you're interacting with these other artists and movers, depending on their age and their experience with contact improv, you get another flavor, another spice that you're interacting with. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's a man or a woman who has such for your physicality has just the right touch or pressure, so that when you are working with each other, it's effortless, And then maybe there are other people that just love to keep melting, It's like there's so many possibilities when we're collaborating that way.
Yep. No, without a doubt. I mean, it's, and there's some people that you collaborate with more easily, and some people that you collaborate which are more challenging. But there's always opportunity to learn more about yourself and increase your ability to find ways of finding common ground. And I think that's such an important skill set as you're an artist in the world, because, as an artist making their way, it's often about finding opportunities to collaborate with people, whether it's collaborating with another individual or collaborating with an organization or being part of a team somehow.
Exactly. Sharing, and bringing, and the collaboration can't be one-sided. It can't be just a person coming to the table empty-handed. You got to find ways of genuinely offering yourself, your ideas, your insights to others,
Yeah, without a doubt.
Daniel, so as we both know, since we use our bodies as an instrument for expression, artists get injured. And in the past, what are some of the injuries that you've encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So, as we can all, probably all of us who've been in the field for decades, we can go through a litany of injuries that we've had, naming them. And, one of my earliest experiences with being injured and really having a long recovery from that injury was in college. One summer I was back in Michigan, and I was doing some teaching, and I was just subbing a ballet class, which at this point in my life I have no right to teach a ballet class, but at that time I could teach an okay ballet class, certainly a beginning ballet class. And I was demonstrating doing a plie in second position, and I said, you don't want to roll in or out on your feet, and I rolled my feet a little bit in and out, and when I rolled my feet in, I guess I rolled a little too far, and my knee blew out of the joint.
Oh my God.
It kind of, if you can imagine how a knee normally bends, it kind of went sideways. And I had surgery. That they did exploratory surgery. They actually didn't have to fix anything. There was nothing ripped, but it was all, inflamed and stuff like that. And for the second 2 years of my undergrad college career, I had reoccurring knee pain. It transferred to both knees because I was compensating, and I had lots of knee problems. I'd have to take a week off of taking technique class here and there, and it definitely affected me a lot. But then after college, and I did some physical therapy, and I did, all the kind of like mainstream stuff you're supposed to do. After college, I had moved down to Washington, D.C., and I started taking dance classes with a dance teacher named Helen Ray. And she is, she's a dancer, she's a choreographer, she doesn't choreograph anymore, but she's also trained in Alexander technique and Bartinian fundamentals and cranial sacral work, all these somatic approaches. Mm-hmm. And there was something about her class. I used to say her class, when you first take it, it seems really easy. But then as you take it more and more, you realize how difficult it is. Because like the patterns she teaches aren't that challenging in terms of what we might think of as like a really difficult class, but the interconnections that she's asking you to make, the awareness that she's asking you to bring to it, takes a lot of time to develop that fine control and that fine awareness. And taking her class really allowed me to let go of some of my unnecessary tension and holding in my body, some movement patterns that I'm sure contributed to my injury, but then also was solidified after the injury to try to protect myself. And once I was able to let go of those patterns to a certain degree, really the knee pain left and was no longer a problem. And, I feel like this has been kind of the cycle a number of times when I've had certain injuries, is that an injury happens, or if it's not a traumatic injury, it's, some kind of wear and tear injury. And then I have to deal with it. And the answer is always to examine my habitual movement patterns and to find where the inefficiencies are in those patterns. And usually it's about letting go of those patterns to find more freedom, more suppleness, more articulation, and less holding, less rigidness, less, it's supposed to be this way kind of thinking. I also had a shoulder injury it actually was when I was a child, I injured my neck and shoulder, but then I re-injured it in my 20s. And it wasn't until I really dealt with tension that I held in my jaw that my neck and shoulder were able to kind of recover. So I think that is this kind of cycle that I've found. And I working with students and also with private individuals, I often find that is a cycle that is often the cycle of being injured, and then how does one recover? It's not only do you have to recover from the injury, but you have to recover from all the compensations that you make because of the injury.
And they're so subtle, and they're so subtle,
That's right.
Did that lead you in some way, Daniel, to explore becoming a Feldenkrais practitioner?
Yeah, very much so. I had kind of in the late 90s, I'd moved to San Francisco for a couple of years and done a bunch of somatic work there. I went to a training program through Moving on Center, which is a school in Oakland that offers different kinds of training programs and workshops. And I moved back to Washington, D.C., and I was really thinking about actually going to massage school. I was also thinking about how do I continue, creating a life for myself, both artistically and financially. And, but I just decided that massage probably wasn't the right fit for me. And, I was just taking different kinds of classes, and I ended up taking a Feldenkrais class. And I fell in love with the method and the approach. And because the approach is very much what I just articulated. It's about recognizing one's habitual patterns, finding maybe new options or new possibilities, to bring greater awareness and efficiency and, more clarity to one's self-image through movement. I was also in the 90s and 2000s. I've also done a lot of exploration of kind of Buddhist-based meditation. So I was really interested in the kind of awareness aspect of the work, because there's a lot of kind of, it's not quite meditative, but it certainly falls somewhere in that world. So it's a nice combination of moving, being, mindfulness awareness, and also being able to kind of really dig into how the body can be most efficient in its actions.
Daniel, I had a chance to review your scenic route video, and when you were talking about this Buddhist kind of philosophy of movement, it almost kind of resonates from that image, from that video where you're on the rock and you're just gently, almost like caressing and slowly moving and adjusting. It's really, really beautiful. I was like, oh my God, this is great. It's powerful. And at first glance, you might overlook it quickly because you're not, one person, because as we both know, people are so caught up with the entertainment where it has to be fast, right? It has to be fast. It has to be catchy. But I'm also accustomed to seeing things and letting it play out and let's see where it goes. And it's just so serene and calm and beautiful. And that's one of the, notes that I wrote on is that scenic route nature. It's so clear, it's so calm. And, it's efficient in its movement,
Yep. There's I think there's many approaches we can have to offering movement and dance to audiences. And certainly there's time for, the kind of big, exciting, daring, fascinating, kind of high technical level movement that's appropriate in certain venues and certain situations. And then there's also time where the quiet, the meditative, the serene, can be offered, in a way that's equally as powerful and equally as engaging. They're not, they're different settings, they're different worlds. The Scenic Route series, which, I've done, I'm actually in the middle of the 4th version of Scenic Route. And the Scenic Route, when we do Scenic Route, we take audiences out on a nature hike. And usually it's a small group. Usually we limit it to 15 people in our audience. So it's a very small audience. But we take them out to nature somewhere and we go on a hike and we do these site-specific performances along the way. And it's very much about not trying to compete with nature or try to stand out from nature. It's about how do we find our place within nature. And, we respond to it, we move, sometimes we move faster or slower, but it's in that presence of nature, not trying to, draw attention away from it. So like the video you saw on the rock that was along the Potomac River just outside Washington, D.C. It's an amazing place. And when we do that piece, I don't have the expectation that people are necessarily going to watch me the whole time. They might watch me a little bit. They might look down the river. They might see a bird fly. They might come back and see how I am now in a different position doing something different. They might, it's more about being within that world than trying to draw attention. And it's just, it's a lovely way to also be in one's body and to offer a performance that has that different kind of expectation, from both you as a performer and for the audience.
Are you doing that series here in Milwaukee?
Yeah, we're in the middle of this 4th version, which is here in Milwaukee. We are doing 4 performances of Scenic Route. It's the same, it's the same performance, or it's the same hike, but we did it in October. Mm-hmm. We did it in January. We're going to do it in the spring and then in the summer. So we're doing it once per season.
Got it.
So people can come along and see how the dance changes or evolves throughout the different seasons.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's really powerful. It reminded me when I was just watching the video, like areas in Connecticut where I used to live, and how much I miss the terrain versus living here in Milwaukee. And the closest thing that I can get that has a very similar feeling is when you go out towards Madison and you're in that area where there's a little more hills and bluffs and stuff. So.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, this is great. Hopefully I get a chance to come out and support and watch.
That'd be wonderful, yeah.
Daniel, what currently inspires you as an artist?
Well, the overall thing that I'm most interested in, and I think Scenic Route speaks very directly to this, is trying to change the relationship or to explore the relationship of the audience and the performer. How, because in traditional performance, the audience comes in, they sit down, you get up there, you come out from the wings, you do your thing, and then you disappear, they clap for you, and everyone goes home. And that's fine, but that always seems to me, or has seemed to me so disconnected from one another. And I'm much more interested in how we can create more direct experiences for the audience, or connect them more directly to the experience of being at a performance. So, of course, in Scenic Route, they're out hiking. The dancers, performers, musicians who are part of the performance are hiking right alongside the audience members. We arrive at a spot, we set up, we do our performance, we finish up, we all hike again. We're chatting. So there's a moving back and forth between this more informal relationship and a formal relationship. And that kind of going back and forth can also be seen in Real Time, which is a monthly performance series that my wife, Andrea, and I create and curate. It's the first Friday of every month at 8:30. We started it last May, and we're going through this June. We'll be at DanceWorks here in Milwaukee, and then we're going to be kind of looking for some other sites to do it. But we're gonna keep it going. And for that performance, we are out in the audience as the audience comes in. We try to say hello and shake the hand of every person that comes in the door. We try to learn their names. Then when we're performing, we stop and we often talk to the audience between pieces. We may explain certain elements to the piece. This last one we did, which was just last Friday night, we asked the audience to make some decisions for us before we started. We listened to a couple pieces of music and asked them to vote which music they like us to dance to, and we asked them their opinions of a couple costume optionings and things like that. Which the idea is, again, to break down this barrier and to offer them a connection and more involvement in the work than just paying their ticket price and sitting there like good audience members. So there's lots of interest I have in terms of subject matter, in terms of other things, but I think at the core of the questions that I'm constantly asking is how can I offer a different kind of experience than just a passive experience to the audience.
It sounds amazing when you give the audience members the responsibility of like helping you find the right song, Mm-hmm. It brings them to attention. It wakes them up. It's like, oh God, it's not a passive, engagement. Yeah. It's a total immersion, is what it is. And a lot of times, just hearing that what you're doing is you are, in a sense, they're kind of becoming, the audience members are becoming almost like the performer as well.
Well, they're definitely becoming a collaborator.
Yeah.
They definitely are. And, and another thing we do, just again, to think about bridging that divide is, when people come to real time, the first time they come, that week we send them a handwritten card thanking them for coming. So that, again, it's not this kind of distant, separate thing, but it's creating personal connections, and it's creating a community around performance events. And so we hope, I mean, for me, that adds meaning. It's not just about being entertained, which hopefully it is also entertaining in a certain level, but it's also about creating meaning. And meaning can come from a work of art as being profound and speak to something that lets us think about who we are as human beings in the world, but also meaning comes from connections and community. And when you are a community, there's something that resonates, that gives purpose or frames that experience for each person.
It's like they're becoming a part of your tribe, you know, your internal tribe with your family and your wife and your daughter, and you're inviting people in to participate.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's the right way to think about it.
Yeah, people want to belong, you know. That's why people join organizations or memberships or groups. There's a sense of belonging, and with this real time, they're getting a chance to belong to your group, and hearing about just simple, like me hearing you talk about just doing a handwritten letter. We don't even get those anymore. It's very rare that, you know, we live in a time where everyone's e-blasting each other, or they're doing a quick Instagram or some, you know, chat type thing, and versus like a genuine phone call or just seeing a cursive, even if it's off, but like the simple fact that you took time to say, I miss you, I thank you so much for coming to our show, you know?
That's right. I think that's right. I think that again, it just it creates connection. You know, and at the same time, the real times we've been, just to then also talk about technology a little bit, we have also been live broadcasting the real-time performances through Periscope for I don't know, since the beginning, so that people can, if they're not here in Milwaukee, they can watch it live through Periscope. Which you know, we have a couple of people who regularly watch our performances from, you know, a couple of people back in DC, someone out in California. There's a number of people, let alone the people that just drop in, you know, through the app, but people who regularly stop in and, you know it's coming and schedule to be able to watch it through Periscope. So that's also a sense of broadening the community a little bit.
Daniel, I wanted to ask a question, which is based on a piece called Unmapped, where you did the improvisation with the guitar. It was every hour on the hour for 24 hours, huh?
That's right. Yeah, it was a duet that I did with Jonathan Mathis. He and I had worked a long time together. He composed a lot of work for me, music for me. We've also performed improvisation together, and we just decided we really wanted to push the line between dancer and musician. So we rehearsed together, and I taught him some movement ideas, and we did, you know, some contact improv together, and just different kinds of improv together. And then he taught me how to use his music setup, which included a guitar, but it was also a lot about looping and doing lots of effects. He uses like lots of non-traditional ways of playing the guitar, some of which are pretty easy for me to manipulate as well. Not as well as he can, of course, but enough so that it, you know, didn't sound horrible or anything. And so we created this improv structure where we were sometimes both dancing, sometimes both playing the guitar at the same time. Sometimes I would dance and he'd play the guitar. Sometimes I actually would play the guitar and he would dance. And it ended up being like a 35-minute structure, some variants, but usually around 35 minutes. And we did it as part of the Capitol Fringe Festival, its first year. And we performed it on the hour, every hour for 24 hours.
Oh my God. Just hearing that it's like you were doing the Iron Man or something, you know?
It definitely felt like it. You know, we'd get on, we'd do the performance, we'd get off, you know, we'd like have 25 minutes to like eat a snack, you know, wipe off. We had 4 costumes that we rotated through. Cause, you know, they'd get sweaty and nasty. And I mean, by the end, it just didn't matter at some point that they were just all sweaty and nasty and nonstop. But we had 4 different costumes we'd rotate through. We had a couple hours. I took a shower because we did have a shower just to kind of like, you know, rinse off and reset. We did a little writing in between to keep kind of like a journal of what was happening. And then we just would go on again. Just like, you know, eat a Cliff Bar and drink a little tea and out you go again.
Oh man. The question that was formulating in my head when I was watching that video was like, what was the time frame where you felt like, oh God, I'm going to fall apart? You know, sometimes it's like the between 3 in the morning and like 5, or you're not sure if it's night or day.
Yeah. When it was, you know, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we realized we still had more than 12 hours to go. That was like, oh man, how are we going to get through this? And, cause we started our first performance was 9 o'clock on a Friday night. And so our last performance was Saturday at 8 o'clock.
Oh my God.
So, you know, you make it through which is kind of crazy. We should have started really a lot earlier on Friday so we could have had less, you know, but yeah, those early mornings. But you know, the interesting thing was that there was only, of those 24 hours, there was only 1 hour where we did not have audience members.
Huh.
Every other hour we had audience members that showed up and watched the show. We had some people that stayed for multiple hours in a row. Some people really committed to being part of this experience with us. So we only had, I think it was like 6 o'clock in the morning was the only hour that we did not have an audience member. And then starting at 7, we had some people that got up early to come in and see where we were in the early morning and stuff like that. So that was pretty exciting to have, you know, to see people's commitment to be with us. Even in those hard hours.
Yeah, what you did, in my opinion, was the Iron Man. I give you so much respect to see that. Oh man,
yeah.
Daniel.
Well, I was a lot younger then. Let me just say that.
Yeah. As we're winding down, I just would
Sure.
like your words of advice. And there's 2 of them. One is, if you can address to the artists, the people who are listening who are just, you know, interested in being an artist, you know, what's a word of advice you would like to leave them with?
Yeah. You know, the thing is that there's so many pathways to being an artist in the world that I think often we aspire or we put on a pedestal certain kinds of success. You know, the person that gets to join a major dance company, or the person that makes it into something like Cirque du Soleil, or there is that kind of success. Unfortunately, that success is usually relatively short-lived. But it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But just to know that span of one's life is going to be a small amount of one's adulthood, and you need to think about the full range of who you are as an artist and how you want to be an artist in the world. And so I think it's important that people, you know, yes, they need to train, they need to take technique classes or find other kinds of dance styles or skills, movement skills that is helpful for their goals, for their short-term goals or what have you, but also to you know, at some point to think about what can I offer that is unique in the longer term, right? Are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to be, are you going to go into some kind of somatics practice or teaching, some kind of movement practice? Are you going to work towards being a choreographer, or other kind of, skill set within the artist world, doing arts administration work, all that kind of stuff? I think there's, and some artists, get the privilege of traveling the world and offering their art all over the place, and some artists get the privilege of working within a community and really bringing meaning to a community or a neighborhood or part of a city. And all of that is equal. All of that is value. And I think that too often we are focusing on one kind of success at the expense of maybe where we can serve the community, serve the world, serve the art form, serve ourselves in a more profound way. So I think that is something, that is kind of a big kind of meta way of kind of thinking about oneself as an artist in the world. And I think that's important, and finding your path. I remember meeting someone and talking about her daughter who grew up doing ballet. All she wanted to do was ballet. And she applied endlessly to get into American Ballet Theater, ABT. And at some point it became clear to her that she was never going to get over that hump and get into ABT. And so she quit dancing. And to my mind, that is, whatever was right for her and what she needed to do is fine. But to me, that was such a narrow scope of what it means to be a dancer. And I think all of us have a lot to offer. And I'm sure this woman had a lot to offer. She wasn't, it was like she was getting through auditions. She was getting into programs, but she never quite got into the company. So there's probably many ways that she could have offered value to people through her dancing. But she only had a very narrow kind of path that she was on. And I think all of us need to have a broad path, because there's lots of ways to be an artist within the world.
Yeah, and also, being flexible, mentally flexible, just in case something doesn't pan out, you don't get in that company, you don't get the position, or maybe, sometimes timing, right? Sometimes people want to go to school to get their degrees in dance, and they have to wait the year. So what else can you do,
Yeah, and it's true for everything. Obviously there's something wonderful about getting into a company where you get to tour and get to see the world and stuff like that. But actually for me, that was never an interest. I never auditioned for companies. Coming out of college, I had no interest in doing that work, because I knew that just wasn't my personality. And, and sometimes, later that, it would have been nice to have some of that on my resume at a later point, but I found other ways to be successful within the dance community and in the dance field that, ultimately has been incredibly rewarding for me. So yeah, it's about finding your path and not getting too stuck.
Daniel,
can I say one more thing about that though?
Oh, please, no, please go ahead.
The other thing that I want to say is that at the same time, you should be thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur or as a consultant, because you want to have a lot of different possibilities to offer as you go out into the world. Again, few of us are going to have just a job. Many of us are going to have multiple jobs, or always moving from one job to the next, whether it's teaching or performing or doing other kinds of work. So you also have to think about what is your skill set? How can you strengthen your skill set, strengthen those skills that you're interested in, pursuing more and expanding that skill set again through your interest, but having a set of skills that you can move out in the world and offer value in a lot of different situations. So that's also something to not get too locked in.
Yeah, a lot of times young artists, they forget that they are developing new skill sets. You know, the ability to interact with people in a small setting, or the ability to take lead if necessary, or problem solve. You know,
that's right.
We hear it all the time when you read certain magazines. You know, the creative problem solving community is a really big. It's going to be a big thing as we move forward. Because creativity seems to be squashed, but yet a lot of young artists keep it. You know, they keep it fresh, but they don't understand that they're developing these really amazing skill sets. You know.
Yeah, that's right, and also just the ability of being like, you know, you should make sure you know how to write, because you're going to have to write grants, or you're going to have to write press releases, or you're going to have to write even just letters or emails that are coherent. You know, when I get an email from someone who is not, you know, is using lots of slang or kind of shorthand stuff, they're not going to get my attention. So, you know, being able to write clearly is another skill set that's going to be, it's really important to be able to kind of move past, you know, to move to these multiple layers of success. It may not be so important in an audition if you're going to be performing, you know, in some big show, but to get past that or to do the next step in your career is going to be important.
Understood. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
What are some social media accounts that you have that people, when they're listening to this, like, I mean, I'm also going to put it at the end of the video, but like, do you have a Facebook?
Sure.
I know you're on Facebook under Daniel Burkholder.
I have Facebook under Daniel Burkholder. Also, they can follow Real Time. You know, Facebook.com/realtimemke. They can follow that to keep track of that. They can also look up my dance company, Daniel Burkholder, The Playground. On Twitter, I'm at D Burkholder. And also on like Instagram, I'm D Burkholder as well. So those are probably the best places to find me.
Oh, that's perfect. Daniel, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to posting this video in a couple of weeks, okay?
Great. Sounds good. Thanks, Edwin.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, this is Edwin Olvera from Edwin Olvera Dance and Creative Services. And in this particular Friday session, we're going to be talking about 5 ways to get hired by the dance company of your dreams. This is a really interesting approach to trying to get hired by a company. This is a method that I use quite a bit, and here we go. So, first thing you want to do is research the company of your dreams. That means find out how they exist online, whether it's their website, their YouTube channel, their Vimeo account. Look at what they're doing for work. Find out who their artistic director is. You know, what's his background. The more information that you have about the company, it helps you in your mind's eye think the way the company thinks. You know, what style of movement are they really focusing on? Is it acrobatic? Is it contemporary? Does it match up with your particular skill set? Because the worst thing is for a person to audition for a ballet company and they don't have anything. They've never studied for a ballet company, not even taken a class. So you want to make sure that the dream company you're trying to match yourself up with is a good fit, not only for your skill set, but also the simple fact that you have done enough research on them to see what they're doing for work. Research can also include watching documentaries about the company, whether it's like a PBS type thing or whether it's a featured film based on that company. Like, for example, if you love Pina Bausch, then watch that movie called Pina that came out a couple years back. Or if you're interested in Pilobolus Dance Theater, then you might want to watch a movie that was called The Last Dance, which came out in the 2000s. Okay, moving on. So the next thing you want to do is take workshops